All right. Well, today I'm so excited to bring you guys this episode of the podcast with my new friend, Justin Thomas. He is a behavioral health expert for business leaders. He's worked with companies, executives, and entrepreneurs to help them overcome an exhausting pace of life and start maximizing their well-being and performance. Trained at Duke Integrative Medicine, he is a national board certified health and wellness coach and principal at Doable Health, which helps businesses reduce their healthcare spend by having a healthier workforce. He graduated with honors from the UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School, Ireland's top MBA program, and is a proven entrepreneur, having started and operated multiple seven-figure businesses across various industries, including technology, retail, and health and wellness. In addition to his executive leadership role and health coaching work, he is also the co-founder of a faith-based nonprofit called the C.L. Thomas Fellowship. His work has been featured in Forbes, Fox, Faith Driven Entrepreneur, and JAMA Internal Medicine. He offers insights into how to live a sustainable life of provision in his book and podcast, both titled Become a Provider. His podcast guests include expert physicians, professional athletes, entrepreneurs, and New York Times bestselling authors. You guys will have to make sure you check that out. We'll link all that up in the show notes, of course. But I'm so glad that Justin and I have connected, and I'm super excited for this interview. So thank you so much, Justin, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Great to be here as well. And, we were chatting before this, and looks like there's snow in your neck of the woods, and we're getting some here in North Carolina soon as well. So thankful we can do this from the comfort of our own homes.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. I saw where, you guys are really getting hit with some snow these days, or some colder temperatures. So I think we've been missing out on winter, and you guys have been catching it. So yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, I want to make sure that our listeners know a little bit more about you. Obviously you've got the credentials in health and wellness and entrepreneurship and helping business leaders, but I want to know, who is Justin day to day? How did you get your start in this, and a little bit of your background story? So I'll just let you go straight in.
Thanks. Well, you know what? It's funny to reflect on, because there's a little bit of just fortune and luck and blessing and pride to all get me to where I am now. And I joke about that because, as soon as I went to school, I knew I wanted to go into business. That was just a non-negotiable. I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather started a furniture store business in the evenings while he was doing bookkeeping for a coal mining company in rural Virginia. And then he handed over the stores to his sons. And then when it got to my generation, my dad said, no, you're not going to do this, Justin. You need to do something else. And so I knew business was in my future. I didn't know what that meant. And it's probably one of the most generic degrees you can possibly get. So here I am in college thinking, how am I going to specialize in this? And I saw healthcare administration, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting and different and kind of college-y, right? I mean, you're supposed to do things that you haven't done before. And so I signed up for that, took a couple courses, and I went to my advisor meeting one day, and I said, I think I'm more into investing. I'm just going to drop this healthcare concentration. And he looked at me and he said, well, gosh, that stinks, because we're about to give you an award. You've got a high GPA. And it was a small college. So I think I had the highest GPA of all the healthcare administration concentrations at the time. And because of my pride, I said, oh, you're gonna give me an award? I'll keep it. And so fortunately, that's a good use of the pride of, I said, I'll just keep that. And that actually led me into the business of the business side of healthcare. And that's kind of funny to reflect on it, but I knew I wanted to go into business, and healthcare seemed like an interesting path. I kept that concentration. And because of that concentration, I ended up getting hired by a company that was actually developing software for physicians. And that was my first job out of college. And I've stayed in the health and wellness space for most of my career since then. But isn't it so funny to think of those small decisions that have such large impacts? And I just have to laugh about that one.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like we have that in common. I was also raised in an entrepreneurial family. And when I set out on my own endeavor, I was met with the same thing. Are you sure? You might be working a lot more than you think. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'll be doing what I love. Right. And that's usually what brings entrepreneurs to what they're doing. So that's so fun. I'm also laughing too, because I think it's interesting how I look back on my own journey as well. And I think, it's so common for people to, kids, whether it's childhood, teenage years, college, whatever people recognize in you and pull out in you is typically the path that you'll follow. And I think about, the same thing for me, I was always gifted in writing. And so people would always say, you should be a writer. You should be a writer. And then eventually in college, you become a writing major. And then you're told, well, there's good luck with that. So maybe you could work in publishing. And so that's the journey that I took. So it's just so interesting how that lines up. So I want to hear from you about, obviously we kind of align when it comes to health and wellness and getting people sort of started on their health and wellness journeys. And when we had our sort of pre-call before this podcast, we really connected on that topic. So I want to make sure that we talk about that. So what would you say? I mean, obviously you're working with probably high-paced business leaders and healthcare executives. What are some common things that you see in that space? And what is your direct approach with these business leaders? Like, what is it you're doing exactly?
A lot of themes that I see, and probably similar to what your listeners can relate to, is just that you get so busy with life that you don't invest into your own health and wellness. And you just become accustomed to this feeling of, well, I'm just always exhausted, or I'm always like tired, or I never have time for myself. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, we have this whole theory in business leadership where it's called servant leadership. And that's wonderful. It's something that I was taught during my MBA program of, there used to be the traditional management model, telling your subordinates what to do and expecting them to do it, and then using that to climb the corporate ladder. And then there's this whole new theory around servant leadership and how to serve your customers and your employees and your subordinates and your teammates, in a genuine way. And while I think that is admirable, I think we've taken a little bit too far, and we've forgotten to serve yourself and provide for yourself in order to do the same for others. And so there's this beautiful, tension in life, and we're trying to find this balance of how do you make sure that you're providing for yourself so you can, serve others in a sustainable way. And it just takes that acknowledgement of, hey, I actually don't feel great, and to address it. And then that's where the work starts. And so different people want to start in different ways. And we have this thought in our minds of, I know what it means to be healthy. I just need to do it. And I would challenge that to say, well, actually, I think we need to be more curious to say, well, I don't know, like, why am I not feeling better? And what can I learn to challenge my limiting beliefs in this moment around this field of health and wellness? Because while there are some timeless truths, we're all unique, and you've really got to be genuinely curious about what's going to work for you. And there's a lot of different initial steps to do. And what I find fascinating is the behavioral health side of things, meaning the psychology behind change, because as you know, it's really hard. I mean, typically people need to have a moment where they just feel enough is enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it comes up to that every time, right? That rock in a hard place where people are just like, I've had enough of feeling the way that I feel. I need to do something about it. And it's interesting because I know when I was working in the corporate world, especially, I was surrounded by a lot of obesity, sedentary lifestyle. I was sitting in a cubicle 8 hours a day myself. And it took a lot of effort on my part when I did finally embrace that I needed to make a change. I had to get up and walk during my lunch hour. I had to take breaks and walk the floor of the building. And, I had to set aside time for an early morning workout. And those are things that a lot of people just, they don't recognize takes intentionality, or they just think that they don't have the time to do because they're at work or whatever. So I think you're right. I think it comes down to recognizing that it's time to make a change. And I also think that people out there, like the percentage of people who are out there doing it, the people who are prioritizing their exercise and their nutrition, they are such an example in the workplace, right? Like I can remember there was somebody that I would always sit in the lunchroom with, and she was always bringing fresh veggies in her lunch and or a salad that was, super huge and super clean. And I remember thinking, here I was with my like peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever, and thinking, oh, I should probably like become an adult and change my lunch. Right. And then just seeing people that do step into that corporate gym. We had a corporate gym on our premises, right? Or seeing people go for a run at lunch hour. That's really inspiring. And I think I just want to call that out, because if you are in that small percentage of people who are moving your body and you are taking it seriously, don't let any sort of negativity or toxicity in your work environment keep you from doing that, because most likely you're inspiring people, whether you know it or not. So yeah, that's cool.
I'm glad you brought that up because it reminds me of some good words of wisdom of from a manager early on. Here I am fresh out of college, with this newly minted business degree, and I go into this startup, and my manager said something that sounded really harsh to me at first. And I was taken aback by it. And I'm so thankful he did because I see the truth in it now. And what he told me was, hey, Justin, no one's going to be looking out for your career. You need to be intentional about it. And like I said, at first that seemed really harsh. Like, gosh, like I thought that's what the job of a manager was. But thanks for, popping that bubble here pretty early in my career. And I think the same thing's true with our health and wellness, where we're expecting someone else to like maybe this like physician who's actually not trained in nutrition whatsoever in med school to just tell us exactly what to do. Or we think our spouse or our friends, there's like this, maybe subconscious part of us that thinks, well, someone's going to tell me what to do and then I'll just do it. And then you realize, just like my manager told me in my career, no, I needed to take ownership of that and to be intentional and not assume that someone is looking out for me in that area. And I think there's some parallels in our health and wellness journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what do you think typically, what I'm thinking specifically about maybe the female executive, and this is something that keeps coming to my mind as you're speaking. I'm thinking about the female executive who, is working a minimum of 40 hours a week. She's got that pressure from her career. She also comes home to, let's say, small children or, school age children and is in charge of the laundry and, and she's taking care of the household too. There's a lot of stress in her life. And from my perspective, when I'm looking at hormone health, right, I'm thinking about her adrenals. I'm thinking about, is she getting enough sleep? Is she able to prioritize herself? What are your thoughts on sort of, whether it's male or female, what are your thoughts on the person who's sort of carrying it all? What are some things that they should be looking to do, or what are some first steps, I guess, is the best question.
I think a great first step is to take time to think about what is your health and wellness vision for yourself, to clarify that. And that might sound like too soft of an idea and a step, but I think it's critical before you do any of the health hacks, because then what we're trying to do as a health coach to support people in behavioral change is that I could tell people what to do, but that's not going to have a long-term impact. I could review some of the research and the science, and that will change some people, yet most people will change based on relationships. And so once you form those healthy relationships with those voices in your life, you might change. And then what's even better is that you've got this intrinsic motivation. And I think you can discover that intrinsic motivation if you take time to think about, what is my health and wellness vision for myself? And that could be a simple activity of journaling if you're a writer, or just visualizing it. And in fact, during the health coach training program, we did an exercise that I was very uncomfortable with, but it was very impactful. And that's what a lot of things in life turn out to be, isn't it? Where the teacher said, all right, everyone, get in your seats and sit down with your feet firmly on the floor in a comfortable position, palms up. And they led us through this guided visualization, something that I was not very familiar with at all. And I'm looking to my left and to my right to see, people really doing this. And sure enough, they're closing their eyes, and the teacher leads us through this visualization process. And the whole idea behind that was to get us in a peaceful frame of mind, concentrating on our breathing for a moment, kind of like doing a mindfulness exercise that has become very popular and a buzzword in this day and age. And if you're looking for a way of calming the heart rate and just focusing on the breathing, closing the eyes, getting in a comfortable position, that's wonderful. And if you take it a step further, you go through a visualization process of just kind of imagining meeting yourself, your ideal self. It could be a year from now or further than that. And you kind of do an interview with your future self to see, like, how you feeling and how did you get to this place? And any words of wisdom for myself. And after that brief exercise, I mean, it's like 3 to 5 minutes, our teachers had us come back present into the room and actually just kind of write down or draw what we saw. And for me, it was kind of fascinating because I was a skeptic going into that class. I didn't fit the mold coming from a business background, and then finding myself with, people in healthcare, like nurses and doctors, and then also yoga teachers and instructors, and, kind of it's not often that I'm the minority as a white male, but I certainly was in that health coach training program. And you feel just kind of like a fish out of water. And so for those that haven't really been intentional in their health and wellness journey, and you think that's like someone else, another niche, it's not. Like we all can take ownership of our health and wellness and find an authentic vision. And so after going through that exercise, for me, I had this vision of like a seasoned Navy SEAL, kind of older and wiser, with just more experience of being in the game and stronger. And I don't come from a military background whatsoever. So it was a really fascinating kind of visualization process for me. And that led me to challenge myself to say, well, how can I get closer to this person? How can I become physically stronger and also just more engaged in life, to have some of those war stories in my own version of that in my career? And that actually pushed me to sign up for some endurance events and challenges. And so back to the question though, that was a huge moment for me of just a way of getting started, was going through that exercise of coming up with a health vision for myself. And once you have that, then you've got a direction to go towards. And I'm sure that everyone's health vision for themselves is to have reduced stress. I mean, that could be a common need that we all have with the demands of our life, especially parents, and you're trying to balance everything that is thrown upon you on a good week. And then you've just got life that happens even more than that with the unknown events. And so, but if you keep that vision in mind, then it helps you build that intrinsic motivation to continue doing the activities that's going to be healthy for you, even when you don't want to. That could be starting a mindfulness practice through apps like Calm or Headspace, or doing it just totally on your own. I had a client who started journaling, and that helped just get all of the stress from the day on paper versus unloading on their partner. So, but it all starts with a vision, and then you can experiment. And that's what I call it. It's just you're introducing experiments into your life, and think of it as 2-week experiments to see, does this help? Like, does this help actually reduce my anxiety? And I know you shared with me, Jenny, about a great story of, you wanted to have a routine, and, the experts say like, you need a morning routine. And for you, it just didn't work, right? And so everyone's life is different and your motivations are different, and you just need to personalize it, customize it. And then here you are, you have a fantastic night routine that really serves you well and inspired me as well with the questions that you ask. And so I think, I would encourage everyone not to do what other people think you should do, or magazines tell you what to do, or like the latest video recommends. Those are just hacks. If you take time, think about your own personal health vision, then you can come up with strategies that will be more likely to last.
Mhm. Yeah. It makes me think of the quote, and I think about this often when I'm doing a tough workout. There's this popular quote, and I'll probably botch it, but I'll get to it here. Basically, it's like, your body is completely capable, but it's your mind that you have to convince. And so I love that you just talked with us about mindset, really. Like, how do you get your mind in the right frame of mind to be self-aware, to visualize what you want your future or even the day ahead to look like? I think that's so key. I don't know. Are you familiar with the book Atomic Habits by James
I
Clear?
am. Gosh, what a wonderful resource that is. If everyone could just take some time and pick a book to read this year, I think you'd get a lot of value from Atomic Habits.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are two books regarding habits that I always recommend. That's one of them. And then Charles Duhigg has a book on habits as well. I'll link those up in the show notes for people who are listening. But one thing that I took with me into 2021 last year was this concept that James Clear talks about of habit stacking. He talks about, what is something that non-negotiably is just part of it's really down into the grooves of your brain as far as you do it every single day, right? Whether it's brushing your teeth or starting your coffee pot in the morning. Like, what are those little things that you do? You take a habit that you want to have and that you want to build and create, and you stack it with the habit that's already ingrained. And so I have always struggled, and we talked about this before, but I've always struggled with a morning routine. So this year I've just decided, well, why am I worrying about it in the morning? Like, I'm not a morning person. Let's just do it at night. So I'm doing it at night, which that's what you were just talking about. But what's interesting is I do have these little things that I do every day. We all do, right? And so one of those things is we have an espresso machine. And so it takes a couple minutes for my espresso machine to fire up, maybe 3 minutes or so. And so I just turn on a short meditation on my phone. I put my AirPods in and I just that's my 3 minutes. Like I've stacked that habit. So something that I struggled with for an entire year to fit into my day, or I just would push it to the back burner. It really is that simple of, okay, what is something that I want to do? And let's pair it with something that I'm already doing. So just wanted to call that out for anybody listening that's looking for a resource there, because it starts with mindset. It starts with that self-awareness of knowing that, okay, this is something I'm going to make a priority and I need to really be present, right? Like I need to be present and knowing what I want my life to look like. Another thought crossed my mind too, of I just listened this morning to, I'm a huge Brendan Burchard fan. And I listened to he has these short little podcasts, and I listened to one this morning, and it was called Slow Down Time. And it was about being present in the moment and understanding like what your life really looks like. And he said the majority of people are really, it kind of goes to this concept of the busy working mom or the busy working father. Like we're just kind of getting through the day, right? Like getting the kids on the bus, getting the dishes thrown in the sink, whatever. And he said, in the vast majority of people, what do we do when we're in that sort of frantic lifestyle? We pour caffeine on it, is what he said. And he said, we pour coffee on it, right? And he's like, because that's going to make it better. And it's so true, right? But then at the end of the day, you're like, it's such a blur. Like, were you present in those moments? And of course, the example he gives is, are you just kissing your spouse goodbye because it's a routine, or are you making it a moment? Are you treasuring and making those moments? And so that makes, when you were talking about really visualizing and setting aside the time and the breath and the visual space to really understand where you are, right? Like you can't know where you're going unless you know where you are, where you're starting. And so I think that that's so key, that whole concept of mindset. Another thing that I think you mentioned too is, and I love this, and this is what I want to talk about, is, because we wear different hats. And I'm thinking again, specifically about the moms out there, a lot like me, right? I work from home, and I have to really focus on, this is Jenny at work, and then this is Jenny at home, right? Because it's all happening in my house. And so transitions have played such a huge role for me. And I just want to touch on that and kind of get your take on it. When I'm exiting Jenny, the working woman, and I'm entering my living room, and I'm entering the space of, okay, now it's time for my children. I've really had to I have actually little Post-it notes above my doorways. There's a Post-it note above my 5-year-old's doorway that says, she needs me on my A game right now. And this is a question that I ask myself every night during my nighttime routine. And so it just allows me to like stop before I enter the bedroom, take a breath, and be like, now I'm a mom. Like, this is who I am right now. So I just want to hear from you, for these people who are like I said, doing it all, so to speak, and they're in this fast-paced environment. Let's talk about transitions. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And what are some tips that you might have?
The first time that I was exposed to that challenge, I remember, was as a younger dad coming home from work, where at the time I had about a 25-minute drive into work and the way back. And I found myself at my worst when I needed to be at my best. So I just came to that realization of, well, this isn't working out very well, where I'm tired after work, coming home, and then this is the time that I get to spend with my wife and my newborn daughter, and I'm just exhausted. And like what I wanted to do was the typical thing of like sit down on the sofa and watch TV, and like, how awful is that? That's exactly the opposite of what my family needed at the time. And this is before getting into the health and wellness field, where in that season of my career, I was CEO of a small tech company. And so I remember, as he said, we tend to pour coffee on it. And so what I would do is my hack was like, oh, well, let me just bring a snack and I'll just eat it right before I leave the car, and I'll kind of have this sugar high going into the family. And that was a good hack, actually, for a little bit. And at least it showed a willingness for me to try to change and do something. And so I'd encourage people, just even if you're doing things the wrong way, like I was doing, where I was trying to sugar load before going home to get a little boost of energy, at least the heart was in the right place, right? And because the mindset is important of, I need to be, you put it so beautifully, I need to be on my A game. And for me, I was just thinking, oh gosh, I just need to be better than, I can't have this be my worst, lowest energy type of moment here. And so like, how do you change that? So there's a strategy of caffeine and sugar to feel physically different. And then that's not sustainable. It's not the healthiest way. We don't want to do that. The whole goal here is, how can you do sustainable habits? And so I love your idea of a a written word to inspire you. And perhaps also something that I've tried to take advantage of is to think of not completing a task, but really enjoying the moment. And a more recent change of that has been our bedtime routine. I've got two girls, 8 and 5 at the moment. And so it used to be where I was really excited about maybe doing a little bit more work in the office, and I would be thinking of that project or that item to get done. That was actually life-giving. It wasn't stressful for me. I wanted to do it. And I realized I was hurrying up the process as quickly as I could. Like, hey girls, like, let's get these teeth brushed and let's get like this hair brushed and let's get in bed and finish the story. And I just realized, wow, I mean, that's not the father I want to be. That's not the parent I want to be. And it's not enjoyable for me. So I'm sure they can sense it too, even as children, that,
Mhm.
you're just rushing through this rather than enjoying it. And it actually doesn't take that much time, more time now. It's like, and they can see my engagement is much higher, where I'm asking them, hey, can I tell you a story? Or can we do this? Because it's fun for me. And all I needed to do was challenge myself to say, this isn't a to-do list item to just get done here. This is an experience that I can enjoy.
Yeah. I love that you just said that. I had an epiphany myself just recently. I'm like you. I love my work, and I do work a lot in the evenings just because I work from home, and it's sometimes easier when the kids are asleep. And I just had that almost identical moment a few nights ago where I was like, "Come on, let's go! Like, time for books, time for bed, time to go." And I remember when I left her bedroom, like every parent, it's like all day long you're counting down till bedtime, and then they go to bed and you miss them, right? And so like the second I walk out of her room, I'm like, oh man, I really rushed that moment. So yeah, self-awareness is so key there. Well, I'm interested in that. I'm going to put you on the spot because it's not often that I get male interviewees. And so I want to just, and you guys talked to me about women's hormones the other day. So we've been enlightening each other. So
Yes.
I want to talk specifically about family lifestyle, because this is something and that I come up against often in helping women get started on their health journey, right? They come to me usually saying, I feel off, or I can't lose the weight or whatever. And they finally have this moment of like, something needs to change, kind of like that rock and a hard place we were talking about earlier. And one of the biggest things that I have found that holds women back from long-term, from long-term results or long-term, effort is spousal support. Um, a lot of times women will say, I started my exercise program and all my husband does is balk at me about, you know, whatever, or he sits and watches her on the couch, or he doesn't want to, he's very opposed to it. Now, I will say from my own experience, sometimes it takes a little while for what you're doing to influence others, right? And at the same time, like I have women that'll ask me like, well, how can I get my husband on board? How can I get him to want to be healthy too, or whatever? And my best advice is don't say anything to him. Just continue what you're doing. And eventually he will most likely say, hey, I think I'm going to join you. But I want to hear from you, as a man, as a business leader, as a father, what is your perspective on that? Like, what do you think it is that's truly at the root of that? And what would you suggest that people do if their spouse is not supportive?
Well, I think that's key to a habit forming is we talked about having the vision, and that builds intrinsic motivation, and also having those what we call green relationships, as green support people rather than the red and yellows in your life, and to identify that. And so, a couple different strategies, right? Like it would be easy to say, we'll just eliminate the reds in your life and turn the yellows into
Yeah.
greens. And that's hard to do. And that's a spouse, right? I mean, that's the exact opposite of what you signed up for. And so let's assume that option is off the table. It also goes back to, is your current activity that you're implementing, like you mentioned, a new workout routine, and they're not getting the support they need from their spouse, that's actually when they have that challenge, think of it like actually a blessing. And here's why. Because what it is it's challenging your activity, and it's saying, hey, do I really want to do this? Am I committed to this, even without the support of my spouse at this time? Because then you've got the right vision, you've got the right intrinsic motivation. And to your point, it's going to be able to sustain that initial blockage from the spouse, in this case, the husband not supporting the way you want to. So, and it was probably it's probably good for us all to, when we prepare for a new habit and we're excited about it and others aren't, is to actually say, this is a good thing because I'm testing myself. Like it's a test to, is this important for me or not? And then, once you do that, think of it like a blessing rather than a curse. When you have um, that red coming from the other side of the relationship. And then the other thing too, what I think is important is to talk to the spouse eventually to say, hey, I want to be the best spouse possible. I want to be the best parent possible. And in order for me to do that, I need this time and I need your support. And so that way you've got a vision that you've clarified, you've put in the time and effort, you're committed to it. And then all of a sudden, when you share that in a confident way, you're going to get his attention and he's going to realize, oh, this is just me being selfish. Eventually they'll see that because they want the best version of you too. And I think framing it in that way might be helpful for those conversations when appropriate.
Absolutely. Yeah. When earlier, when I said, don't say anything to him, obviously communication is key in every relationship. But I think what I should have said is don't try to convince him, because I think convincing is, I'm not in the convincing business. Like, I don't want to convince anybody. I want you to sort of have reached that conclusion yourself. And then I'm here for you. Right. And it's the same thing with a spouse. Like sometimes just the action of them seeing you consistently pursue this goal, you can, put up with the sarcastic comments at first, or the resistance, as I like to say. And that resistance is usually coming from the fact that you're making a change, and no matter what change it is, it's different. And so because it's different, it causes this sort of disruption. Right. And so you just have to kind of overcome that and get through that initial obstacle. And, but it's so interesting because I think it's so common that women want to start something, like they feel this intrinsic motivation, or they feel this desire to be healthier, and then getting the husband to give up the Oreos, or getting the husband to start to get on board with the healthier meals or whatever is the struggle. So I just wanted to put you on the spot and see and get your take on it. I want to hear about your daily routine. Obviously you're a successful person. You put your health and wellness, you make it a priority and whatnot. So I want to hear, as a family man, as a businessman, like, what does your day look like from sunrise to sunset?
Well, what it typically looks like is during the course of a week, I'm active 6 days out of the week. And at the moment I have this end goal in mind of my first endurance marathon challenge, which is a 50-miler in March. And so it's gotten me to clarify my activity goals. And so my routine will look like Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings from 5:30 to 6:15. I join a group of men for an outdoor workout called F3. And that's been a very positive influence in my life. And so very challenging and just body weight workout at that time. And then I'll do, after that group workout, I'll do a short 30-minute jog either before or after as part of my training for the run. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays will be my dedicated run days. And for those, I'm a little bit more flexible. So sometimes I'll do those in the mornings. Other times I'll do them in the afternoon, depending on the schedule of the day, how my body's feeling as well, and what I have before me. And so that's those are big buckets that I'll reserve for workout times. And what's nice about the early morning is that it doesn't influence family life whatsoever. I mean, it seems crazy, right, for those that aren't morning people and haven't done it before. But for me, it's been great just from the mind, body, spirit to join this group of guys, good friends of mine now. And that's been helpful for me. And then we also have like a little mini homestead here. So we have just an acre and a half, but we've got 12 chickens, a couple pigs, and a dog. So my morning routine is feeding them in the mornings, which I like a lot because, there's this theory in health and wellness about the importance of cold therapy. And you could do that with an ice bath or a cold shower. And for me, it's like working out outside is what does it for me most of the time. Like this morning was freezing, right? It's like 25 degrees outside and you're out there bundled up. And it's hard, but it's this weird, motivation to get out there with the guys and a little bit of accountability with it. And so just to give people like an idea that that's what I've gotten into. And of course, it didn't start out that way. And in fact, it was after my daughter was born, my firstborn was born, that I just realized I'm not making any time to exercise, and here I am as a new dad, and it's not going to get any easier. So what am I waiting for? I just need to like get plugged in. And so I started at that time just doing once or twice a week, just some activity like going to the gym, and eventually finding this workout group with the guys. And then just 3 years ago, out of a bet and a dare, I signed up for my first race. And so that's the exercise routine. And then I enjoy making breakfast for the family. Like that's a big change in my life, where I never cooked. When my wife and I got married, like she did all the cooking, and I didn't start it until I cared more about what I ate. And not that my wife was not cooking healthy, she was. It was just that I became more interested.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, it's weird because I think a lot of guys don't cook because they just don't know how to. And so the motivation's not there if the wife's always cooking. And we did that for the first, I would say, 10 years of our marriage. I mean, that was it. And what's been neat for me to see firsthand is, oh, it's possible for me to change being the guy that if I went to the grocery store, what that meant was I was getting beer, Doritos, and cereal and milk. And then I'd get like whatever random thing that I wanted for dinner that specific night, but not anything else. And then once I went through a career transition from software development to healthcare, to more of a health coaching world, you can't help but just get exposed to more theories and thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, a big mind blowing moment was, oh, like when you eat certain carbs, it just breaks down the sugar. And so like, that cereal that I was having in the morning was just like having sugar. And there's actually a lot of sugar in milk. And so it just challenged a lot of my beliefs. And then I got more genuinely interested and curious on this path of how can I improve my health and wellness. And so I've been more strategic with what I eat. So all that to say, going back to the morning routine, I actually enjoy cooking for the family breakfast and teaming them up. And one recent change before going into my office here to work, I just started doing this from the request of my wife, and it was, to be more involved in the homeschooling experience of our kids. So like many families during the pandemic, we did not appreciate Zoom-based learning, especially for at the time, like a kindergartner. Like it just was not working for us. And we were fortunate to have the flexibility to say, okay, like let's do it ourselves and take on that challenge. And so we joke that we're year by year homeschoolers. And going into this year with my wife, I said, my contribution is going to be, I'm going to get t-shirts made like a startup company. We need t-shirts to be legit. And so I did that. And lo and behold, that wasn't enough to be really engaged with the family. And so now I simply do like a fun activity. I just did it before this call, is that we have a book that I read to the girls. And it's kind of like just a good way of starting the day. It's one called Love Does for Kids by Bob Goff.
That's a great book.
And that's been so fun. Yeah.
I
So
love
fun to read
Bob
to the
Goff.
girls.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd read that, and then I go into the office and I do my work, and I've enjoyed it. And what I would love too is I can appreciate being at home because having the warm lunches, being able to cook again, it's just a nice mental break. Like that's what I'm realizing. These chores, like we talked about earlier, like the bedtime routines or whatnot, it's actually a nice mental break from what you're doing. And you use the word transitions. Think of it like a positive where you are fully transitioning, from one space to the next, ideally. And that's a difficult thing to actually do, where you are laying down the burdens from the day and then stepping into a new role. And what I've found, it actually is reinvigorating, where there's sometimes that I'm just in the kitchen doing some dishes because I need that mental break, or just to pause on a frustrating problem in the office and to do something different. And I've found that to be a unique discovery during this pandemic of being all at home pretty much. And then how do you do that in a way that is not sucking the life out of you or your family? Because there's some tension, right? Like they're in the other room doing their thing. I'm in here trying to do my thing. And there's the stress, and you're trying to act like a professional. And it's kind of weird to step into that role sometimes when you just know you're in your house and there's all this negative self-talk of, am I legit? And, does this make sense what I'm doing? So that's a little like peek into my day and some of the activities that I do.
I love that. And I think, you mentioned, first of all, I have to connect you to my husband because he was a Division I cross country and track runner. So he's into the running game. 50
Oh, he's
miler though.
legit.
Woo! That's crazy. From a non-runner, from a non-runner to a runner. Wow, that's crazy. But so when it comes to, you're talking about your Monday, Wednesday, Friday meeting up with the guys for the run, I love the idea that you're surrounding yourself with other people who are you probably similar to you, who are supportive of your health goals. And obviously community is so key, right? Like finding people who, not just your spouse or people in your immediate family, but people outside of that who can hold you accountable, they know that you're going to show up on those mornings at that time, and that holds you accountable to that commitment. And I think that's so key. I love that you're, taking the time to be intentional with your kids with the homeschooling process. That's amazing. We are, my daughter is a kindergartner. Well, she'll be a kindergartner this coming year. And so we're kind of evaluating school options, knowing where our world is right now and what's going to be happening. But I've noticed that, a lot of times I will get really frustrated with myself over, am I spending enough time with her, like on the weekends or whatever? Because sometimes I will, throw in some work here and there. And one thing that I've noticed is it's not necessarily the quantity of time, but the quality of time. And I love the fact that like you're reading that book every morning, right? There's something that everybody can look forward to, and it is dedicated, face-to-face time with your kids. So I love so much about what you just said and your routine. And I think it goes without saying that successful people have some sort of routine. They have some sort of self-commitments and commitments to them, to their family that they hold as a priority. And I think we've kind of come full circle here. I think we've talked about the concept of, executives and working women and working people who are maybe struggling with burnout, who are feeling that fast-paced environment, and they know they need to take their health seriously. We've kind of come full circle to what that could look like. What could that look like to make it a priority? And we started with mindset. We moved through, habit triggers and talking through little ways to really bring yourself into that lifestyle. So before we go, I just want to make sure everybody can find a way to connect with you and find you online. So if you could tell us all about your social media handles or your website and whatnot, that'd be super.
For those that want more resources, there's some free resources on my website and links to all things social at justinthomascoaching.com. And included in there is what I call the Matter Ladder Challenge. So for those that are looking to develop new habits and just want some suggestions, there's a quick video series, 8 different habits to explore, and you do one a week, and you do that habit stacking of just build on the next one. And those things are supposed to help you provide for yourself in order to provide for others. And there's challenges in there, such as writing a daily thank you note to express that gratitude habit. And there's also items in there of making a commitment to do something you said you're going to do this week. And so some are daily, some are weekly. So for those interested, check out justinthomascoaching.com for that free online course. And then at Justin Thomas Coaching, Instagram, Facebook, happy to be of service. And it's fun to do this personal development provider journey myself and just share some books and resources like we chatted about with Atomic Habits. I actually just quoted that the other day. There's a quote in there about if there's a habit you want to do, think of visual triggers. If it's drinking more water, you've got the water bottle right here next to you, or a variety of things with it. So anyway, I love connecting with people, and thanks, Jenny, for the opportunity to chat today.
Well, I'm so glad our paths have crossed for sure. And I'm definitely going to link up everybody in the show notes to your websites. And I love that this Matter Ladder Challenge sounds like something I'll even try and see what I can learn for myself, because I'm always here to grow and change my perspectives if needed. So thank you so much for bringing your light and for helping us really understand what it looks like to make these tangible changes if needed. So thanks again. I'm so glad we've connected, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.